What's up, CHFFL? Here to talk about the playoff picture as we have 2 weeks left in the regular season and everything is very, very close. This is going to be split into two videos because I know you millennials can't focus on anything more than 4 or 5 minutes. And all the detail I'm putting into it, this is probably going to be a 4 or 5 minute video on its own. So the trade deadline is Friday. This Friday, November 22nd at 3 a.m., which means you really want to get your trades done Thursday night. But today I'm going to review the playoff pictures for each team. Every team in the Toontown Conference right now technically has a chance to make the playoffs. And just a reminder, the tiebreakers first are your head-to-head record against the team you're going up against, and then if you split the head-to-head series, it's your total points scored on the season. So right now, Swan and Mark are sitting at 7-4. Stan is at 5-6, and let me say, Stan beating Roy last week really limited the chaos. If Roy had beaten Stan, this presentation would have been 5 or 6 slides longer. And then Wes, Max, and Roy are all 4 and 7 behind Stan. In terms of total points, Swan has a healthy lead, followed by Mark up in the 1500s. Then Stan with a 1,420. Wes is about 90 behind Stan. Max 100 behind Wes. And Roy about 40 behind Max. That's the most important one to remember. So let's start with talking about Swan and Mark. They're both in the playoffs in any scenario. Swan has the head-to-head against Mark, which means he controls his destiny to win the conference championship and get the first round bye. Mark needs him to lose one of his last 2 games to win the conference championship. But otherwise, those are your first 2 playoff spots. So let's talk about the third one. Stan has 1 game lead over the 3 people below him, and a pretty big lead in terms of points. People probably aren't going to catch him there. He has the head-to-head over Wes. He split with Roy following last week's win, and he lost his first game with Max. His last 2 games are against Mark and Max. Now, the most important game for determining the third playoff spot in Toontown is going to be that Stan-Max game, week 13. Stan is in if he beats Max in week 13 automatically. Can't come up with anything else that'll keep Stan from getting the last spot. Or if he beats Mark in week 12 and Max loses to Wes the same week, week 12, this week. So Max is probably the most likely person to upset Stan and sneak in. He split his series with Roy and he has the 41-point advantage. He beat Wes in their first game, but he's behind him by about 100 points. Even if they were to split that head-to-head, Wes would get the tiebreaker. He beat Stan in game 1, but Stan is way ahead in points, as we saw earlier. So Max will make the playoffs if he wins out and Roy loses a game, or if Roy also wins out but doesn't make up the 41 points. That's because Max will play Stan. He plays Stan and Wes. He'll play Stan, he'll win that head-to-head with him, and then Roy will be the only person left. Max is also in if he beats Stan in week 13, Stan loses to Mark in week 12, and he gets help from Roy and Wes. He would need Roy to drop 1 game and then not cover the 40-point differential, and he would need Wes to lose Wes's other game, not against Max. So really, Max needs to win out, realistically, to beat Stan for the last spot. Now, Wes needs even more help. He lost his head-to-head with Stan. He has the head-to-head advantage with Roy, and he lost the first game to Max, but he has the point differential. That's kind of a summary of what we already said. His last 2 weeks are Max and Swan. Wes has to win out, absolutely, and he needs Stan to lose out. I'm happy this is a much more simplified version than Max's, since this is already running a little longer than I thought it would. Just trust me. The only way Wes gets in now after Stan beat Roy last week is if he wins out and Stan loses his last 2 games. Finally, Roy. This would be the miracle for Roy to make the playoffs. He split his head-to-head with Stan and is way back in points, lost the head-to-head with Max, lost the head-to-head with Wes, split the head-to-head with Max, but he's down so much in points there. And his last 2 weeks are Swan and Mark, who are the best 2 teams in probably the whole league, definitely the conference. So his odds of winning out are pretty low. Roy needs all of this. He must win out. Stan has to lose out to Mark and Max. Wes has to lose once to either Max or Swan. And Roy needs either Max to lose to Wes, or he needs to gain the 42-point differential with Max. So Roy is like a 2% chance to make absolutely almost zero. So to sum up, Swan and Mark are in. Stan is the heavy favorite. I'd put him at like a 70% chance. Max maybe at 20%. Wes at 8%. And Roy at the 2%. Honestly, if I were Ryan or Wes, I would be selling with the trade deadline coming up. I know Wes has been very determined to try and make it anyway, but Stan winning last week really kind of hurt Wes's chances. I'll be back hopefully tomorrow to talk about the High Seas Conference. I hope this was helpful for everybody who was maybe unsure exactly how things were working and what they had to do to make it in. We'll see you tomorrow.